Edit.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Eric Lindsay, your friendly neighborhood professor of music, back with another video on the fundamentals of music theory. Today I want to dive into minor scales. Yes, it turns out there isn't just one, there are three. Why is this? Stick around to find out. So you might recall in our previous video we discussed that every major scale has a relative minor scale that shares the same key signature. For instance, in C major, all the notes are white keys, but by starting and ending on A instead of C, we create the A natural minor scale. Now, we know that the difference between types of scales has to do with the distance between the notes. So let's analyze the intervals in this scale and see how this differs from the major one. I'm going to number the scale degrees of the A natural minor scale first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. And now I'm going to analyze these intervals. A to B is a whole tone, or a tone, or a step, full step. B to C is a semitone, or a half step. C to D, whole tone. D to E, whole tone. E to F, half step. F to G, whole tone. G to A, whole tone. Now, because we can reproduce this scale anywhere on the piano, because if we keep this arrangement of steps, I'm going to move our tonic up to C, so we can make a really clear comparison between the C major and the C natural minor scale. C minor is the relative minor of E flat major, so I'm going to spell this from C to C, and I'm going to borrow those flats from the E flat major scale, because they are shared with the C natural minor scale. B flat, E flat, and A flat. Let's go ahead and add those to our scale here. Now the relationship between C major and C minor, where the tonic is the same, but the key signature is different, is called a parallel key. We're not going to confuse this with our relative keys, which is where the key signature was the same, but the tonic was different. Now that we're looking at these two scales side by side, we can notice what scale degrees are altered in the minor version. Scale degree 3, scale degree 6, and scale degree 7 are lowered. These are the ones we just borrowed from the E flat major key signature. So importantly, we don't have that leading tone anymore. So the top of this scale is going to lack that strong desire, that tendency to pull upwards to the tonic upon resolution. In fact, scale degree 7 is the only one that has a different functional name from those that were in our major scale. That lowered 7th scale degree isn't called the leading tone here, but because it's lowered, it's called the subtonic. Now, what if we wanted to retain the sound of the minor scale, but add back in that magnetic pull between the leading tone and its tonic? Consider the 16th century tune Green Sleeves, which you've probably likely heard played like this. As well as like this. Now, the first example was played using the natural minor scale, where the 7th scale degree was lowered, the subtonic, giving it that modal sound. In the second example, the 7th scale degree was raised, so to create a leading tone, this results in a new scale, the harmonic minor scale, where scale degrees 6 and 3 are lowered, but 7 is raised. We need to note two important things here. Raising the 7th scale degree is going to require a natural or a sharp accidental to overwrite the fact that the 7th scale degree is lowered by the key signature. Another important thing to notice about the harmonic minor scale is that when we lower scale degree 6 but raise scale degree 7, that's going to create a distance larger than a whole step. It's going to take 3 semitones to span A flat to be natural. So this is an augmented second, and it was considered in the Renaissance and Baroque eras to be a really ugly, very dissonant, very unsingable interval. So to smooth out this interval, composers started to raise scale degree 6 and scale degree 7 to form the melodic minor scale. This is their third type of minor scale, which sounds smoother and more singable. It also directs the motion up to the top of the scale. And interestingly, we're only going to raise scale degree 6 and 7 when we're ascending this scale. On the descent, when we're going back down from high C to low C, or from the top tonic octave to the lower, we're going to revert back to the lowered scale degrees. And that's going to direct the melodic motion back down towards the dominant, and then the lower 5 notes are going to continue as per usual. So to write the melodic minor scale, we need to include both the ascending and the descending parts of it, seeing as how it's the one scale where the rules are different on the way up than from the way down. So to summarize, the 3 minor scales differ based on whether scale degrees 6 and 7 are their natural positions, which are lowered, or raised by a semitone. And we've explored whether we are looking at a relative minor key or a parallel minor key in the process. Remember, relative is same key signature, different tonic. Parallel is same tonic, different key signature. How about you try it out? I will draw 2 minor scales using accidentals, and you need to identify which scale is used and then employ the right key signature for it. If it's a natural minor scale, you don't need to add any accidentals to it, but if it involves raising scale degrees 6 or 7, you'll need to draw in naturals or sharps. So this first minor scale is built on the tonic of F, and looking at the first few steps, we can see that we have a lowered scale degree 3, so I can confirm that's a minor scale. And then let's look at what the key signature of F minor is. F minor's relative major is A flat major, which has 4 flats. So I'll draw that in the key signature here. Am I done? Not yet, because the key signature is going to convert this D and this E to D flat and E flat, and these are supposed to be natural. So we're going to need to raise these notes using natural signs, which look like this. So we have a lowered scale degree 3, and it appears that we have raised scale degrees 6 and 7. Thus, this is the ascending version of the F melodic minor. In the other example, we're descending from A to A, and all I see is a G sharp. So do we just need to add this G sharp to the key signature and call it a day? Again, not so fast, mainly because we don't have a key signature with only G sharp in it. Instead, think of the attributes of all of our minor scales. They'll all have lowered scale degree 3. It's just what happens when scale degree 6 and 7 that makes a difference. So where are those in A minor? The 6th scale degree is F, and the 7th is G. So it appears that nothing is marked for the 6th, because that's naturally lowered by the key signature. The half step between scale degree 5 and 6 is what makes that 6th lowered, not because there's an accidental attached to it. This is already handled in the key signature, as we can see. Instead, it's our G. It's been raised to a G sharp, or in other words, a leading tone to A. That distinguishes this as a harmonic minor. Now let's see how this plays out in an actual piece of music. I have here J.S. Bach 2-part invention in D minor. If we look at the key signature, we see 1 flat. Do we know if this is in F major or D minor? Remember that we need to look for context clues to tell, are we in the minor mode or are we in the major mode? In this case, I'm seeing a lot of C sharps. So what does C sharp have to do with either D minor or F major? It doesn't have much to do with F major, but D minor, it will be our leading tone. This would be an example of our harmonic minor, or raising that scale degree 7 to imply D minor. Now, an interesting thing that happens here is, and we're going to see this play out actually in a lot of Baroque and classical music, is that we start to see C sharp for quite a few bars. It sounds like this. And then after a while, we stop seeing C sharps. Does this mean that we just need to keep playing C sharps moving forward? No, that's not how it works. In notated music, the accidentals are only going to apply to the notes that are on that same line or space within that bar. And then after that, when you don't see that accidental again, we're going to move back to defaulting to what the key signature says. So if we have C sharps for the first several bars, and then we stop seeing C sharps, we now have C naturals. This is an instance of Bach changing key areas, or changing what scale we're using. Let's check this against where the tonic seems to be implied by very firm landing points at the ends of phrases, in which case we're going to find this thing called a cadence, and we'll explore in later videos. But as we see later, we have a lot of emphasis being applied to F later in the passage. So this is going to kind of like hint at this notion of music that modulates either to different key areas within a phrase or between phrases without changing the key signature, but there's definitely a felt sense that we're moving key areas around throughout the whole piece. So that's an example of how this all plays out in practice and why we want to start turning our attention to what scales are used at a particular moment in a piece of music. So this concludes our exploration of scales. If any of this feels rough, it may be because you haven't internalized your key signatures yet. So study up on those before moving on. In our next video, we'll delve more into intervals, the specialized vocabulary for measuring the distance between any note, not just those close together. I hope to see you there.